And that's why it never hurts to ask. What's going on, everybody? This is the Coverbandconfidential podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders to learn how to rock more and suck less. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott. Right.
Also, you don't asks, you don't gets.
That's also right. So I didn't necessarily ask, but I kind of put myself in the position to get some free guitar strings.
Ooh.
So
nice.
The story goes, during the pandemic, I did that weird TV pilot show where I was on a Zoom call with the guy from Five Finger Death Punch and playing guitar. And I met this guy named John, and John is a guitarist up in the Long Island, New York area, and we just kind of hit it off, just hanging out on the onlines. And he's worked for a bunch of different gear companies, and he recently landed at Clear Tone Strings, and he was like, "Hey, do you want some?" And I was like, "Yes, please." And so they call these the lights, which is very strange to me because in the brand of string that I prefer, these are considered regular. So I actually had to double check what the gauges are on those strings. It was like, is that right? Did I get the wrong ones? But no, but in Clear Tone I play lights and not regulars.
Right.
And listen, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool slinky boy. I've played.
Oh, me too.
I played Ernie Balls forever. So
my whole life.
I am morbidly curious to see how these fare.
I will say, I tried some one time. I was enticed by an online ad, and I bought a set of them, and I put them on, and I really did like them. Cool. I really liked them, but not as much as they did.
Maybe that's it.
So the price comparison is substantial. And they're hand wound and done in a vacuum chamber and made out of plated asteroid metal. I mean, they're very, very fancy. None of that's true, but they're fancy compared to the, mass marketed Ernie Ball, 5 billion strings a year kind of things. And they're priced accordingly. And I really did like them, but when it came time to buy another set, it wasn't those.
Yeah.
But, I'm interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if they offer any sort of benefit over what I'm currently using, I'm always game.
Sure.
I don't know how many free sets I'm going to get. I know how many I currently have, which is 4. Ooh. And if I just put them on the Strats, that's two restrings.
So my experience was they lasted longer than the Ernie Balls. They played better. They sounded better. By all the measures you'd measure them by, they're an improvement.
So if you have any experience with these Clear Tone strings, let us know about it. Coverbandconfidential@gmail.com, or leave a comment on this if you're watching this on YouTube. Because I'm down to try it all out.
I was joking about they have some tech advantage that they claim. I can't quite remember what it was.
Yeah. So they are referred to on the packaging as treated strings.
Treated, right. Yeah, some kind of coating or something.
So at less than 1 micron thin, our multi-patented treatment gives our string the feel and character of traditional premium strings, with 36% more volume and 48% more sustain. And up to 5 times the lifespan of untreated strings.
They for sure played nice. They for sure lasted longer. No question about that.
The louder and sustain claims have little asterisks next to them. So there's definitely some sort of, criterion that has to be.
All other things being equal. Something.
But listen, I'm
try them out. I'm eager to hear what you think.
This has been the season of trying new things. We haven't necessarily been a review channel or a review show. But as of recent, there's just been a lot of folks that are like, "Hey, do you want to talk about this?" I was like, "Yeah." So I will. Yeah. Speaking of which, the Both Lighting review is out. I dropped it this morning. I've been working on it for about a week or so now, and finally got all the B-roll and stuff and got the thumbnails the way I like them. And so that one's out there. There's a discount code in that one as well. So if you want to save a couple of bucks, you should go check that out. And then I'm hoping to start doing the Power Stage 170 review, start shooting that this week so that it can be out before the end of May. That was kind of the target that we were going for.
Nice.
And, as I've said, so far I've been really impressed with the unit, and I hope to make this review very thorough so everybody feels like, they're getting the whole story.
How thorough are you going to be about a 3-dial device, right?
Well, I mean, if it sounds good, it sounds good. And part of the thing that I was waiting on to do this shoot is this guy right here, which is my Sennheiser 906, which is the higher end version of the 609 that a lot of folks have. This was in the possession of Ben, our front of house guy, who is currently on the road with Warren Zeters. And I've been quietly hounding him about this for the past few months, but he's a man of his word. And it landed in my mailbox this past week. And I'm just excited to like move some air in this room and plug it into an interface and like make guitar sounds. It's been a while since I've had to do that.
Yeah. Through a really clean mic. That's gonna be nice.
Really excited about getting that put together. And then, we've got the clear tone thing and then the request platform that I've been testing and we'll get to use pretty solidly over the next few weeks. That's also in the pipeline. So lots of review stuff coming down the pike, primarily because reviews don't really mean much unless you're able to like road test them. So gigs kind of have to be a part of the equation.
Right.
And actually one of the things I want to do, if I can make it happen, is play the Power Stage like in a live setting, like players in a room, like moving some air. I'll have to like make that happen or go to like an open mic or something. I just want to like be able to give it a go though.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. One other thing I wanted to note is that I got a lot of really positive feedback about last week's episode, being a little open and vulnerable. And even folks in my own group kind of hit me up and were like, hey, let's get these things kind of delegated. Let's figure it out. So that felt really good.
It's very good.
And then this afternoon, as we were prepping to start recording, I got a DM from the one and only Paul Kent, formerly of GigGab, saying that he knows exactly how this situation feels and that it was well timed. So I told him, I was like, we do this, we do what we do in the hopes that, we make other people feel like they're not alone in their experiences. And so it's important to share, even though it doesn't always feel great.
Right.
Yeah. It was just good to hear from Paul. Maybe we'll have him on to talk through that at some point.
Be awesome. Love that guy. I'd love to get an update from him.
Absolutely. All right. So let's switch over to reviews. We said we kind of had ourselves a bit of a backlog, which is wonderful to have. But this one really caught my eye because the title of this review is "This is not a review of the podcast." And this one comes from Adam Z, who plays bass in You've Got 90s. And it says, "This is not a review of the podcast," parentheses, "which is quite good." I will take that. Yeah. It's a review of the insanely cheap Patreon membership. If you listen to this podcast for free, you will no doubt benefit from incredible insights, ideas, and discussions that make you a better band leader or band member. But the real secret is joining the Patreon. I did, and I'm so grateful to have 24/7 access in Slack to 100 of the most thoughtful and innovative cover band musicians across the country. Trust me, you owe it to yourself, your bandmates, and your audience to become a part of this community. Adam from You've Got 90s, New York and New Jersey's 1990s cover band experience.
Right. Adam is just a great contributor on the Patreon Slack. Just there every day, full of good ideas, funny. He's terrific.
Yeah. He's been incredibly just like helpful also.
Yeah.
He's helped people out with, some graphic stuff and just has been an
gear stuff.
Yeah.
And
100% value add. Just the second he dropped in, he's been super helpful. So shout out to Adam and the folks in You've Got 90s, and can't really argue with that kind of endorsement. We take very little credit for it, but it is something that I constantly get stuff out of and enjoy participating in
all the time. And when we first started, it was like, do you think anybody's going to want to pay a little bit a month to come hang out with us? Like, who the heck are we? Yeah. We are a small part of it. It's really the community itself that has grown up and that is just so self-supporting and self-sustaining. All the Adams that are on it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's so many Adams.
Yeah.
It feels good. It feels good to be, around your people.
And Adam, remind me, what's the minimum monthly to join that?
It's $5.
Yeah, $5.
And if you pay up front for the entire year, you get like I think a 10 or 15% discount. So it would actually be less than that if you paid up front.
It's like $4.50.
Yeah, it's probably no more than a couple sets of these clear tone strings for
sure.
a year.
But if these last set of clear tone strings would cover you for several years.
Yeah, and if these last 5 times as long, you're getting roughly the same value.
It's all to the good is the point.
Absolutely. So thanks to Adam and everybody else who's a part of the community. And this week's topic is from the community as well. If you guys recall last week, the review from our friends in Taking Off Monday, the question was around pricing, and that we've kind of talked about it a little bit here and there, but we never really like dug into it. So we figured while, the iron was still hot, we should go ahead and get into it.
Let's dig.
And listen, this isn't going to be like a super in-depth, like granular deal. There seems to be some pretty universal truths when you start talking about compensation for the kind of work that we do.
Yeah.
And it's not always linear and it's not always logical, I guess. But there's tiers, and most of us have been through a few of the tiers, and then there are some tiers that are above us. And we've got folks who listen to this show that are in all of them. So, they may be able to provide additional insight for the ones that are a bit out of our purview. But let's get into it. So at the bottom level, let's start like bottom up. So at the bottom, you've got your free gigs. You've got your, I'm doing this just to get my hours in.
Yeah.
Necessarily, I'm not sure I even have something to offer.
Yeah. Well, you got your putting in the reps gigs.
Yeah. We've been a little trepidatious about this topic, about what you should and shouldn't do.
Yeah. Listen, there's also community pro bono gigs.
Not necessarily the same thing as a free gig.
Not at all. No. Listen, my first gig back after surgery is going to be at the Porch Fest. That is not paid, but is a wonderful event, and I've played it for years and years, and I'm really excited to have it be my first time out, and it's only a 45-minute set, and it's on a friend's front porch, and the stakes are low, and like I kind of trust I can get through it, and if, I can't, it'll be, nobody's going to care, versus if I was getting paid. But that's very different from the open mic that I might go to if I didn't have a gigging background to lean on, if I was trying to build stage confidence for myself, stage cred in the community, or the freebie gig I might take because I don't feel confident I can throw a price out there and have it be heard.
Yeah. And I feel like we've all kind of been in that situation where money's not great, but there's a couple of other things that might be beneficial, but also like, hey, I'm going to do a thing that's kind of low impact for me that benefits a large group of people and isn't really any skin off my back. Like, I feel like that's totally justifiable and is not necessarily the, hey, I'm playing at, Matt's Rib Shack and we're going to play for 4 hours from noon to 4 on a Sunday.
For ribs.
Yeah. It's most of the ribs I can eat.
Plus fries.
Yeah. Maybe if you're lucky.
Right.
Some of the,
Cold
yeah,
fries.
I mean, everybody that is listening to this has more than likely played a gig for beer.
Yep.
It's a thing, and you need to experience it, but it's not a place you should dwell. Mm-mm. It is a transitionary experience on your way to more, lucrative things.
Cautionary experience.
Yes, and then moving up from that, we have what you would consider the the $100 a man gig, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk to that. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, look, it is the reality of the market. You can fight that all you want, feel like it's not enough, whatever. I've pushed toward 150 or 200 and won that fight sometimes and lost it sometimes. But that's what the price has been set at for, 50 years now.
Yeah.
It has not seen any kind of inflation adjustment. And nobody's gonna pay their bills off of those gigs. That's just the reality. The people who are playing those gigs are weekend warriors. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean they're bad bands at all, but that's a kind of business that is a sideline of whatever you really do. And if those gigs are satisfying and joyful and wonderful for you, I've certainly had some, and I'm sure will in the future. I don't want to cast that in a negative light. If there are people who for them, like that's the peak of their ambition, they don't need to go any further. Playing a couple times a month at a bar for $100. It covers my beer costs for the night. Hopefully you get a
beer and gear,
but maybe who knows. But yeah, right. It's going to pay for those expensive strings, and that's going to be great, and that's fine if that's where if you don't want to do the work to get beyond that, it's completely fine. Absolutely valid. But there's a whole world of payday beyond that.
Well, and one thing I want to note is that, talking about the $100 gig today versus the $100 gig a while ago, if you were getting paid $100 a man, let's say in 1985, adjusted for inflation, that's almost $300 today. So imagine if your run-of-the-mill like cover band gig was paying everybody $300 a man. Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be nice? And could you fill your calendar with those enough to have it be a living?
Well, and
maybe
back then you probably could have.
You probably could have. Now, it's not. I don't want to lay this at venue owners. The economics of running a bar have changed radically since then. So it's not like It's not like venues are holding out on us and being stingy. I mean, that's sort of a not very informed take. But those gigs were livable back then in a way that they're not now.
Yeah, you could be a legitimate middle class working musician playing 5 nights a week, $100 a night.
Yep.
Sounds cool. But yeah, that's not the reality anymore. Now, with that idea, if $100 for inflation adjusted is $300, then we're talking about, well, what does a $300 a man gig look like? And for the most part, that's kind of the world that we occupy for the most part. So that is your private parties, your corporate events, your maybe on the low end wedding type gigs where you are in this kind of higher earnings bracket, but in exchange for that, typically the amount of things that you are responsible for also go up. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you can't find a gig where they're going to pay the entire band $100 and ask you to bring your own PA and lights, because those gigs do exist. I don't recommend them.
No.
But in order for my band to jump into that world, it was contingent on us to build our own rig and provide our own sound and lights.
Yeah, private parties are not going to have that for you.
You are basically building a stage from the ground up. Yep. And that is your responsibility, and that is a reason why you are able to charge a premium for that service.
Now, ironically, the bar that pays $100 a head doesn't have a PA either. But they don't care that it costs you a lot to put the show on. That's not relevant. Yeah. Yeah, for me, private parties, acoustic, I'll charge $300 to $500. Something like that. For the band, if it's the 3-piece version of it, $1,500 to $2,000. For the 4-piece, $2,000 to $2,500. Something like that. And I rarely get pushback at that price point for private parties. Yeah,
I don't feel like even when we quote ourselves, there's very I don't remember the last time someone was like, it costs how much? So, that either has something to do with the echelon of, clientele that are reaching out to us, or maybe just those people don't email us back and they say that in,
sorry, time didn't work.
Yeah. Or they just don't email it back, which is fine.
Right.
But
no, I mean, that's customer selection happens in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So typically if you're in this world, there's a lot more client provider interfacing going on, a lot more advancing. You're going to have additional things. You're going to have resources available for clients to potentially promote the show. You're going to be putting contracts together and stage plots and technical writers and hospitality writers. And you have to have a certain expertise in this field in order to be able to provide this service. It's knowing the answers to things that you may not necessarily know the answers to currently. And it's part of the reason why we sell the blank contract is that most people don't know what they don't know. And I sure didn't when I started. And it just took, 8 to 10 years of falling on my face or stepping on a rake in that sea of rakes, like Sideshow Bob, to get it dialed in. And now, contract is second nature. I sent another one out today. It requires some additional resources. It requires additional acumen. It's more businessy, if you will. It's less about the beer and the gear and having fun with your friends. And it's more about, okay, we've got a service to provide. You were very much in
Yeah.
the service industry at that point.
Yep.
And with that comes the added responsibility and just, you could call it a hassle, whatever.
Well, and some legal liability starts to accrue
Yep.
around that.
Yeah, that's when you start looking at, insurance policies and LLCs and that kind of stuff, because stakes are higher.
Yep.
And so you have to be prepared for that. And hopefully, if you've listened to the show this long, you know what most of those things are and how to handle them. If you haven't, this is the first time you're listening, well, welcome. And you've got 370 some odd episodes to dig through to find out.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you could buy Adam's blank contract and, read in it all of the things that have gone wrong ever in his career that he has now got terms around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, save yourself a bit of the hassle. So yeah, I would say that this particular range is going to be from around, I'd say 1,500, maybe 1,000 on the low end, to maybe just north of $5,000. That's kind of the block that you're occupying in this world. And so it's more money, more responsibility, additional skill set required. And most of what you are doing is outside the realm of learning the parts and playing the stuff.
Yeah, that's all table stakes.
Yeah, it's basic, like that's just kind of, ground floor type deal.
It's a given.
Yeah.
It's a given.
But it goes without saying that a certain level of competency and preparedness is requisite for this kind of work. You can't just waltz into a situation like that and not deliver the goods, because if you can't do that, then you won't get hired again.
Right.
And they can smell it. Clients don't necessarily know more than you do as far as getting into this world, but there is a ground floor that you have got to be able to deliver at.
There's a lot you can get away with, but there is a floor to that.
Yes. So beyond that level, and this is where we start getting into the aspirational, guesstimational tier of things.
Yeah.
I would say is kind of your over like $10,000 and over per show deal. And this echelon is kind of interesting because in a lot of situations and in a lot of the kind of stuff that we were just covering, the amount of obligation and expectation goes down, at least for the performers. So in my world, I'm the person advancing the shows. I'm chasing down the leads. I'm drafting the contracts. I'm interfacing with the clients. I'm loading in the gear. I am performing the show. And then I'm doing all the wrapping up stuff afterwards. If you're in a band that's making that kind of money, like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a show, somebody else is doing all that for you. So the thing that the additional revenue gives you is it gives you the ability to delegate those things to other people who just make sure that your main job is to arrive at the show ready to perform. And getting to that level there's not a straight pathway to it.
Well, and there are 100 pathways to it.
Right. And, in some cases, it could be that you are able to put together a stage show that is so undeniable that you can just write your own ticket. It requires an immense amount of talent and an immense amount of time and effort to get a show to that level. And even when you get your show to that level, you can't get that payday unless you can convey that undeniability of your product to other people. So it also requires a certain amount of media and advertising and just legwork, spreading the word of what it is that you do.
Yeah. And we're talking here about, for instance, big touring tribute acts. Brit Floyd, for instance, right? Folks who have years in it, but maybe not the same personnel, right? But the business has been around that long,
Right.
and the what they deliver is that, compelling and undeniable, that they can command that kind of dollar.
But with that, they've got an apparatus around them. So
Right.
they have a booking agency. They probably have management of some kind. Even
Sure.
if the band is self-managed, there's more than likely an agent.
There's staff, there's people.
So you've probably also got a production team, or
For sure.
or you.
The band is not handling loading in the PA.
Right.
That's not happening. Right.
And if you've got some sort of tech situation, like you may not even be setting up your gear.
Right.
And your job is literally to walk on stage, do the thing, and be done with it.
Right.
Which, I mean, it's the cream dream, really. When just
Yeah.
like somebody else does this for me, awesome. Where do I sign up?
Yeah, and the paycheck is like on the high end.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah. Now you're like you mentioned, you're definitely splitting the pie with the pie's got a lot more slices,
Sure.
but it's a much bigger pie. So you're still probably coming out ahead.
No, you make the pie higher.
Yeah, and on a related note, these things always come back to our friends that we know, Mike and the Pork Tornadoes. They got to that level through social media. They had a YouTube video go viral, but in doing that, they also amped up their live show, and they are now basically like an amphitheater, like shed touring act with that level of production and their run of stage show, and they've got an entire crew of people, and it is what it is. That's where they're at.
But of course they break the model, right? They're doing something a little different than all of that. I mean, I mentioned Brit Floyd because I know that they're playing at the Arts Center downtown here, and it's like all sold out. It's the same, the same space that touring Broadway companies sell out. So it's like it's a lot of people come to see an act like that. That's not what Pork Tornadoes is doing. They're four-walling.
Yep.
They're establishing their own events. They're selling their own tickets. They are handling the cost of the rental of the space and the payment of the team and all of that. And that's the business for them. They're not booking a gig. They are throwing an event.
Yes.
It's a whole different kind of business.
Yeah, it's an interesting lane of work to be in. I was watching an interview with Joe Bonamassa, actually, and he got into the business of doing this years ago. And it is the reason why he isn't really known much outside of guitar circles.
Guitarists.
And, PBS specials.
Right.
But he was able to figure out the economics of four-walling his events and running the place out himself. And he basically gets to keep, the majority of that money, which allows him to buy all of the guitars in every color and year and shape that he wants. And it is a very lucrative way to make a living. However, it is also a very large amount of financial risk to take upon yourself.
Yep.
Because if you spend all of this money and your event goes perfectly, you walk away with a huge amount of cash and you look like a genius. If that doesn't happen, you are probably financially destitute, because the amount of upfront cost for that kind of gig is astronomical. Yeah. And I've talked with other groups that have done this kind of thing, and I do appreciate the environment that we have cultivated where people feel comfortable talking numbers and stuff to us. I have seen some of these ledgers and the amount of upfront money that the band is putting out versus the amount of money that they walk away with. I have seen some of these scenarios and I'm just like, I don't get it. Yeah. Because it's not like they're not getting paid really, really well. But if you think about the amount of risk and the amount of potential things that could go wrong, and I look at the 5, 6, 7-way split that they all go home with, I was like, ugh, I don't know if it's worth the ulcer
For
that I
sure.
would, generate
Yeah.
planning it.
The times that I have played, and I've never done it as a band leader, I've done it as a side guy, at ticketed events in venues. What happens at the end of the night is the venue manager walks up to you with a piece of paper that lays out, here are the number of tickets that were bought. Here was the revenue off of that. Here are the 20 lines of expense nibbling away at that revenue. And here's the bottom line. And the original band I was playing with for some time, we did a few of those. And yeah, the split at the end was $12, something like that. And that was fine for this band. Nobody was hoping to pay their rent off of this gig, I think original bands going to deal with that a lot more than folks mostly in our space. Yeah. But compared to then, that was Friday night, Saturday night. I'm going to get $100. Yeah. It's a whole different kind of thing. But I'm getting paid, 5 times that much for, was that 5 times the work? No.
Well, and this is also the kind of argument that people have as far as like public gigs versus private gigs. Like, I would say the amount of like fun that you would get playing a $5,000 private event versus a $5,000 like a live like a public deal where you walked away with $5,000. That second one's going to be exponentially more amazing.
Yeah.
The sheer amount of people and the enthusiasm and the energy is going to be much, much higher on the second one than the first one.
For sure.
And that's something you do have to get used to, is that even these bands that are commanding large paydays, if you're playing these private events, these corporate deals, you could go home making more money than you've ever made in your entire life playing to an absolutely empty room.
That's right.
We did it. We played an $8,000 gig at 7:00 in the morning, and like nobody watched us.
Right.
And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And not everybody can do that. There is a certain population of musician who like there's some self reinforcement, adulation, acknowledgement that needs to happen, that these kinds of gigs just don't work for them.
Right.
So
right.
That's a skill set in itself.
Yeah.
So depending on how far up the chain you go and how much of the pie you're willing to take on, the amount of responsibility and liability that you might be responsible for kind of fluctuates. So
yes.
If you're a guitar player in this premier tribute act and like your job is to show up and play the show, like, yeah, you're walking home with a bigger cut and you feel good about it. And you probably get back in the van or the bus and drive to the next town. And you're like, yeah, no, this is great. Or you could be the person who is running the show and, losing sleep every night because you're not sure if you checked all the boxes and whether or not you're going to play to a packed house or you're going to lose your shirt that night. So
right.
It all depends. But, this whole thing's a gamble. And if you're not willing to bet on yourself, you'll never know. And there's no guarantee that you'll be successful or not. Talking about ticketed events, there have been nights where like we walked away with like over $2,000 in like just from the door, which it feels insane. And yeah, we've also done that. Everybody gets $12 kind of deal. So when you're kind of looking through these things, you just have to kind of figure out where you feel comfortable, because like we said, there's this whole spectrum of gigs that are available to you. And on one side of the chart, maybe on the lower end, there are exponentially more opportunities. And you could fill your calendar with one of these every single night of the week. And as you go up the chain, the amount of opportunities go down, but the potential upside goes up. So you have to kind of find the amount of risk you're willing to take on, the amount of turning opportunities down based on price that you're willing to do, the amount of possibility that nobody shows up or you play to an empty room and still get paid that you're comfortable with. There's a lot of factors here. Yes. And there is no right answer. There's no silver bullet. There's no direct path. It's just whatever situation you land yourself in and how you want to proceed. So if you are wherever you are in your journey and you're looking at the groups that are kind of behind you and you're looking at the groups that are kind of ahead of you, you need to make sure that you've done that calculus on what steps you want to make in order to get to the next level and whether that's worth it.
Yeah.
You know, we've kind of vacillated on that idea, but in reality, like we kind of like this kind of mid-tier world where, you know, we might get to go to a cool venue and, you know, they'll take care of us and we'll have a good time and we'll meet some cool people. But we're not necessarily aspiring to get a full-time agent and play 10 shows a month year round. Like that's not what we're looking for. And I've definitely thought about the whole four-walling possibility, but haven't really found something that it felt like it was worth putting up the capital to do it.
Yeah.
And that could change.
Yeah, for sure. And then when it comes to the bar gig, the $100 a head gig, you know, it's not for nothing that that's why you don't ask, you don't get, right? That we started the show there. You know, I have been testing that $100 limit and sometimes successful and sometimes not. I've never had anyone be offended enough at my stretch of that $100 that they stop talking to me. So I've always been able to kind of pull it back and keep the gig if that was the choice to make. So that's available. You know, you can always negotiate these things. You can always talk, and I think we ought to be. I think, you know, despite the fact that the fundamental economics have changed and what that gig provides the people who take it has changed, I really think you should be negotiating.
Yeah.
I think you should be negotiating.
Well, and also, you know, there are other kind of equations or ways to kind of look at things. We don't play a lot of bar dates or club dates, but, you know, in this particular season, we need to start looking at those a bit more because, you know, we've always kind of viewed those as a sales funnel because if you
100%.
play a bar gig for a lower payday, you might be playing in front of a couple hundred people that may have needs outside of this venue for live music.
Yes.
And so there is almost always an upside to taking a lower paying gig with a high potential audience because it could parlay itself into additional opportunities down the road.
We were playing a private party. It was an oyster roast at a multi-purpose sort of commercial residential restaurant, sort of a whole rebuild of what was an old vintage textile mill.
Okay.
Right, so it turned into condos and lofts and also some pretty upscale restaurants. And we were playing one of their social events. And I was running around with the mic, you know, wireless, being weird. And there was a couple standing at a high top table drinking and watching us and engaging with us. And they were really fun. And I noticed they didn't have wedding rings on. And I said on mic, "We play weddings. Just say it." And it turned out that those two, whose names are Mike and Sarah, became like regulars, came to all of our stuff, and did hire us to play their wedding.
There you go.
But that was the first time we met them, and you know it was like I kind of took a shot there, saying I want to play your wedding, not in so many words, but yeah, kind of, and we did in fact end up playing their wedding. It was pretty great. So yeah, every show, no matter how poor the pay, is a marketing opportunity.
Yep, and we have stories just like that. You know, we'll play something and then it'll end up parlaying into something else. And by making yourself available and just being easy to work with and delivering a good product, we've been able to sustain our entire business off of word of mouth and not really a lot of budgeting around that. So at the end of the day, the thing that you've got to start with is making sure that you have a good product.
Yes.
From there, all of the other stuff kind of kicks in. So that's what you got to figure out. So get the band good,
Get the band good.
then get the business good.
There you go.
And then you get the pricing that you want eventually.
Yep.
And that's it. Nailed it.
Nailed it. What more is there to say?
Probably a lot. So if we left stuff out or if we completely borked this, let us know about it. Coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. Leave a comment on the YouTube video that is eventually going to come out from this. We know what we know, and we can only speak about what we know, and everything else we're just kind of talking out of our rears.
I guess.
Yeah, that dark glass video. People seem to think that we shouldn't have said any. We shouldn't have even mentioned it. How dare I? How dare we?
How dare you? Yeah.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for this week. Thanks again for tuning in. If you'd like to support the show, you can do any of these things. So I'll go ahead and call it for this week. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
You have been listening to the Coverband Confidential podcast for the week of May 16th, 2025. Go get paid.